made fun of how dumb he was to his friends. Never thought they'd tell him. Now he won't talk to me. Hello, Reddit. I'm using a throwaway account because I really don't want this associated with my main one. The last thing I need is for any of my friends or family members to stumble across this post because, well, it's not exactly something I'm proud of. My name is Helen, and I'm a 28-year-old woman. My husband's name is Chris, and he's also 28. We've been married for about 3 years now, but we've known each other for much longer, since college actually. Back then, we were what you might call the perfect couple, the kind everyone looked up to. We had that effortless connection where we just got each other. I could talk to Chris about anything, and he was always the one person I could count on, no matter what. We shared so many of the same interests, we had fun together, and honestly, we were best friends before we were ever a couple. We were the couple that others would make comments about, like, wow, you two are so perfect together, and it felt like we really were. There was so much love and mutual respect between us, at least in the beginning. I don't know exactly when things started to change. Maybe it was gradual, or maybe I just didn't notice. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. It wasn't that we had major fights or big blow-ups. No, those would have been obvious signs. It was more subtle than that. Little things I didn't even realize were adding up. Looking back now, I can see how it started to slowly unravel. And a lot of it, honestly, is on me. I've been sitting with that realization for a while now, and I guess that's part of why I'm here, typing this out, to get it off my chest, because recently something I said to his friends got back to him, and it pretty much shattered the little bit of trust we had left. I never thought those comments would make it back to him. I never thought they'd take what I said seriously, but they did, and now Chris won't even talk to me, and I don't know how to fix it, or if I even can. So yeah, this is where I'm at. This is how things went from being the perfect couple to this. And I guess I'm sharing this because I need to get it out, and maybe, just maybe, I'll figure out how to make things right. Right now, he won't even acknowledge me. He hasn't spoken to me in days and is treating me like I don't exist. And honestly, I don't know how to handle it. I know I screwed up. I know I said things I shouldn't have, and I regret everything, but I can't seem to find a way to reach him. I just want a chance to apologize, to explain, to fix things. I'm desperate for him to talk to me. Chris is honestly such a sweet, supportive guy. I've always said that our marriage was as close to perfect as you could get. He's always gone out of his way to make me feel loved and cared for, and for the most part, we've had a great relationship. But now, after what I did, I feel like I've completely ruined all of that. Here's the thing about Chris. He's the type of guy who has this unwavering loyalty and kindness. He's incredibly smart, but not always the quickest when it comes to picking up on social cues or sarcasm. Sometimes I even wonder if he might be a little on the autism spectrum. Not in a bad way, just that he has some quirks, and it's something I've thought about for a while. He's brilliant at his job, which is a pretty demanding field, but when he's at home, he's different. It's like the version of him at work and the version of him at home are two different people. At home, Chris is gentle, patient, and to be honest, maybe a little too trusting. He's the main provider for us. I'm a stay-at-home wife, and he's always been okay with that. He works hard but still manages to help out around the house when he can, always making sure I don't feel like I'm doing everything alone. He's that kind of person, always there, always willing to lend a hand or listen when I need him. I couldn't ask for a more supportive partner, and yet here I am, having messed things up. But there's also this other side. As amazing as Chris is, sometimes he frustrates me. I know that's normal in a relationship, but there are moments where I just feel like he doesn't always get it, like he'll forget important things, or he won't pick up on jokes or sarcasm the way most people would. I know those are small things, and I shouldn't let them bother me, but they do. Sometimes it just feels like I'm talking to someone who's not on the same page as me, and I've let that frustration build up over time without really realizing it. And that's probably why I crossed a line I never should have. Chris has always been fine with jokes. We've joked around with each other for years, and he's never been the type to get angry or defensive over something playful. But I guess somewhere along the way, I let that become an excuse to be disrespectful. I said things to his friends, things I never should have said, and it got back to him. I didn't even mean half of it, but I guess I just didn't think before I spoke. The worst part is that Chris has always been the one who shows his love for me so openly. He's never been afraid to show his emotions or do things just to make me happy. Whether it's something big, like surprising me with a trip or a gift, or something small, like bringing me my favorite snack just because he knows I've had a rough day. He's always been thoughtful that way. And now I've gone and hurt him in a way that I never imagined was even possible. Because I knew Chris loved me so much, I started to look down on him. It wasn't something that happened all at once. It was a slow process. After being together for so long, I guess I started to lose respect for him. I took him for granted. I convinced myself that he would never leave me, no matter what I said or did. And because Chris never complained about anything, especially about jokes, I just assumed he was okay with it. I didn't stop to consider how hurtful my words might have been, or how it was affecting him. It began with small things. I would make fun of him for not understanding a joke quickly enough, calling him slow. Chris has never been the fastest at picking up on sarcasm, but instead of accepting that about him, I used it as a reason to mock him. I thought it was harmless at first, just teasing. But over time, I let it spiral. I even criticized him for the things he did well. Chris was always super involved in the housework, which I know is a good thing, but I started to call him a doormat or a pushover. I made it seem like his kindness and willingness to help were weaknesses instead of strengths. His social skills? I'd pick them apart. His dress sense? I'd make comments about how he had no sense of style and how I basically had to dress him like a child. I'd even criticize him for not being handy around the house. Chris isn't exactly the type to fix things or do DIY projects, but instead of appreciating everything else he brought to the table, I made fun of him for it. And I didn't just do it behind closed doors. In front of his family, I'd laugh about how he couldn't change a light bulb without asking for help. In front of my family, I'd tell stories about how Chris was clueless when it came to things like setting up the Wi-Fi or putting together furniture. In front of our friends, I would make jokes about his intelligence, saying things like, "I don't know how he gets by at work because at home, he's completely lost." And everyone would laugh along, thinking it was just harmless banter. But looking back, I know it wasn't. And it didn't stop there. Even when we were alone, I found myself criticizing him for the smallest things. If he tried to help me with something, I'd snap at him. I'd call him a child for needing help with things. I'd make him feel small, like he couldn't do anything right. I'd call him too soft and say that he wasn't manly enough. I'd take jabs at his masculinity, even though I knew how sensitive Chris was about that. He's always been a gentle person, more in touch with his emotions than most guys. But instead of celebrating that, I made him feel like less of a man because of it. It's like I couldn't stop myself. I got so used to making fun of him, both in public and private, that it became second nature. What started as jokes to seem cool and funny around others turned into full-blown disrespect, even when it was just the two of us. I didn't see it as humiliating him at the time. I thought it was just jokes, that it was harmless. But now I realize that I was tearing him down every chance I got. And I have no idea why. Maybe it was because I knew how much Chris loved me, how much he would do for me, that I felt I could say anything and get away with it. I never thought it would break him. I never thought that one day he'd stop talking to me. I just assumed he'd always be there, no matter how much I pushed him down. Now, I can see that I was wrong. I took his love for granted, and in doing so, I hurt the person who cared about me the most. I mocked him so much and looked down on him everywhere we went. It became almost like a bad habit I couldn't break. At first, I didn't even see it as an issue. I thought it was just light teasing, that I was just being playful. But looking back, I can see how much damage I caused. I didn't just poke fun at Chris here and there. I made a point to criticize him constantly, as if it was my way of asserting control or superiority. I don't even know why I did it. Maybe it was because I knew he loved me so much and would never fight back. I used that against him.
No.
In front of our friends, I would make these cutting remarks about how clueless Chris was about certain things. If we were at a gathering, I'd joke about how he couldn't figure out the simplest tasks, or how he was always asking me for help. It became a running joke, but I was the one always leading the charge. I never gave him a chance to prove himself or to show others how capable he was. It was as if I wanted people to see him as less, to make sure I looked smarter or more competent in comparison. It didn't stop at just social situations with friends. I would mock him in front of his family, too, and they adored him. He was the golden child in their eyes. But I never let up. During family dinners, I'd bring up little things that made him look bad. Maybe he forgot something or didn't catch on to a joke, and I would be the first to point it out, laughing like it was no big deal. And his family would laugh along, probably thinking it was all in good fun, but I know deep down it must have hurt Chris. He never said anything in those moments, but I could see it in his eyes. He'd look away or force a smile, but I kept going. I never stopped to consider how all of this was affecting him. Even worse, I did it in front of my family, too. My parents and siblings were no different. They thought Chris was wonderful, but I couldn't help myself. I'd tell stories about him, making him the punchline of every joke. I'd roll my eyes and talk about how he couldn't do anything around the house or how he was too nice and a pushover. It was as if I was trying to prove to my family that I was the one in control of the relationship, that Chris would do whatever I said without question. And the sad part is he would. He was that devoted to me. But instead of appreciating his loyalty, I twisted it into something I could use against him. And it wasn't just in public. In private, I was just as bad, if not worse. I'd belittle him for things that didn't even matter. If he tried to help with the dishes, I'd snap at him for not doing it right, even though he was just trying to make things easier for me. If he asked me a question, I'd call him dumb or say he should know the answer by now. It was relentless. I'd criticize him for not being handy around the house, even though I knew from the start that he wasn't the DIY type. I'd make fun of his lack of manliness whenever he showed any vulnerability, calling him soft or weak. It was as if I took every opportunity to remind him that he wasn't good enough. I don't know why I did it in private. Maybe it was just a natural extension of how I treated him in front of others. I got so used to tearing him down that I couldn't stop, even when it was just the two of us. It became ingrained in our relationship. I was constantly looking for things to criticize, even though Chris never gave me a reason to. He was always loving, always supportive, always trying to make me happy. But instead of being grateful, I took advantage of it. I even criticized his career choices. Chris worked hard, and his job was demanding, but I made it seem like it wasn't good enough. I'd joke that he wasn't ambitious enough, or that he wasn't moving up fast enough. I'd make fun of the fact that he wasn't in a prestigious field, even though he loved what he did, and it provided for us. I tore down every part of his life that he took pride in, and I did it without a second thought. Looking back now, I can't believe how cruel I was. I treated Chris like he was beneath me, like he was someone to be mocked instead of someone to be loved and cherished. I belittled him in public, in front of the people who cared about him, and in private, where he should have felt safe. I took advantage of his kindness and loyalty, assuming he'd always put up with it because he loved me. But now, I realized that I pushed him too far. I genuinely didn't realize what I was doing wasn't okay because Chris never once complained. He never said a word about how the things I said made him feel, so I just assumed everything was fine. Sure, in hindsight, I should have paid more attention to his body language or noticed the subtle shifts in his mood, but at the time, I thought he would be okay with it simply because it was me. We were close, married for years, and he had never made a big deal about it before. I never thought twice about my behavior because Chris always seemed to brush it off, or so I thought. One night, we were hanging out with a group of our friends, and Chris wasn't around for a bit. He had stepped out to grab some drinks for us. As the conversation flowed, I got carried away and started making jokes about him, as usual. It was just casual banter at first, but as the drinks flowed, the jokes started escalating. I made some comments about how dumb Chris could be at times, how it still surprised me that he was good at his job. I poked fun at how slow he was to figure things out sometimes, or how he didn't always pick up on subtle hints or jokes. I didn't think much of it at the time. It felt like harmless fun, and since we were all close-knit, I figured no one would take it seriously. Everyone was laughing, so it seemed harmless enough. The truth is, in the moment, it didn't feel like I was doing anything wrong. To me, it was just venting, or being funny. I never thought Chris's friends would turn around and tell him about the things I said. We were all supposed to be close, and I figured they understood it was just lighthearted ribbing. But a couple of days later, I started noticing something off with Chris. He seemed distant. He wouldn't respond to my texts as quickly, and when he did, his replies were short and cold. He wasn't his usual warm self, and the shift was noticeable. At first, I thought maybe he was just having a bad week at work or was tired. I didn't connect the dots right away. But then it kept going on for several days, and that's when I knew something was really wrong. Chris still wasn't telling me what was going on, so I reached out to one of our mutual friends to ask if they knew anything. That's when I found out that some of Chris's friends from that night had told him what I said. I was horrified. I couldn't believe they had actually told him. To me, it was just innocent joking, venting about some of the things that frustrated me, but in a lighthearted way. I didn't mean any of it seriously, and I certainly didn't expect it to get back to Chris like that. When I realized that Chris knew, I was both angry and embarrassed. I couldn't understand why his friends would go behind my back and tell him something that, in my eyes, was just playful teasing. I was frustrated because I didn't get why Chris was so upset this time. He had always just let my jokes slide before. But then, when I confronted his friends, they told me something that really opened my eyes. They said they felt like Chris deserved to know because they had noticed a pattern in my behavior. They told me that to them, it seemed like I had a habit of undermining Chris, of mocking him and looking down on him, and they didn't think it was right. Hearing that from his friends was a huge wake-up call. I was mortified. I had no idea that my constant joking was coming off that way, and I didn't realize how bad it had gotten. To me, it was just harmless teasing, but to them, and clearly to Chris, it was much more than that. It was disrespectful. And the worst part is, now that I've had time to think about it, I can see that they were right. I was constantly mocking Chris, even if I didn't realize it at the time. Ever since then, I've been trying to talk to Chris about it. I know I messed up, and I want to make things right, but he won't even give me the chance. As soon as he found out that I knew why he was upset, he clammed up completely. It's been a week now, and he still won't talk to me. He's been giving me the silent treatment, which is so unlike him. Chris is usually the type of person who can't go more than a few hours without talking to me, so for him to go an entire week without speaking to me is devastating. It's honestly terrifying. I know I've pushed him too far this time, and I'm scared that he's going to leave me for good. I don't know what to do. I feel completely lost. I regret everything. I regret all the times I joked about him or looked down on him, even though he was nothing but loving and supportive. I regret not seeing how my actions were affecting him. I don't know how to fix this. I need advice. How do I get through to him? How do I make him understand that I never meant to hurt him like this? I'm not sure how to fix this. I don't even know where to start. How do you begin to apologize for making fun of someone who's always been nothing but kind to you? How do you take back words that you didn't mean, but that still caused pain? And most of all, how do I get him to even talk to me again? Because right now, the silence is killing me, and I don't know how much more of it I can take. So yeah, Reddit, I really need your advice. How do I fix this? How do I talk to Chris and make him understand how sorry I am? How do I get my husband back? Update. Hello, Reddit. First of all, I genuinely did not expect my post to get this kind of traction. I expected maybe a few comments, a couple of likes, and perhaps some people pointing out that I was at fault. But waking up to thousands of comments was overwhelming. Honestly, I'm still in shock. I didn't think it would go viral, and now I'm just worried that someone I know will stumble upon this and recognize the situation. I'm mortified by the possibility. The comments and DMs I've received have been a lot. I understand why everyone is pointing out how wrong I am, and believe me, I'm not here to deflect blame. I know that I messed up. I'm not trying to diminish what I did or excuse my behavior in any way. And I think some of you might be interpreting my words as me trying to downplay the situation. That's not what I'm doing. I know I'm at fault. A lot of people have been asking for an update, so here you go. It's not a happy one, and honestly, I wish things had turned out differently. Everything has spiraled so quickly, and I'm at a loss for what to do now. I'm exhausted, both mentally and emotionally, and I'm hoping that somehow Chris will come to his senses and talk to me again. But I don't think that's going to happen. Chris kicked me out of the house a couple of weeks ago. That's one of the main reasons I was so hesitant to post in the first place. So many of the comments were hoping Chris would kick me out or divorce me, and well, You got your wish." He told me to leave, and honestly, it was one of the worst fights we've ever had. Chris and I typically don't argue much. He's always been the type to apologize first, even when he's not in the wrong, just to keep the peace. But this time was different. During the argument, he refused to back down. He told me he couldn't forgive me for what I'd done and that he was tired of being made to feel like a joke, especially after everything he's done to support me and make me happy. He said that this was the last straw, that I'd crossed a line he couldn't ignore. He called it a wake-up call, for him, not me. He told me that everyone around us, his family, even some people in my family and our mutual friends, had noticed how disrespectful I'd been to him, and hearing that from him, in that moment, broke me. I tried to argue, to apologize, to do anything to convince him that I was sorry and that I could change, but he wasn't having it. He was serious, deadly serious, when he told me to leave. I didn't want to at first. I tried to reason with him, thinking he'd calm down eventually, and we could talk things through. But I could see in his eyes that he wasn't going to budge, so I packed my things and left. I've been staying with my parents ever since. It's been a couple of weeks now, and I've tried everything to reach Chris. I've called, texted, emailed, but he's made it clear that he wants nothing to do with me anymore. He's told me over and over that he wants a divorce, and that no matter what I say or do, it won't change his mind. It's like he's completely shut me out, and that's terrifying to me because Chris was always the one person I could rely on. He's always been the one to forgive, to talk things through, to move forward, but not this time. I've even tried getting some of our mutual friends, those who were willing to help me, to talk to him on my behalf, but that didn't work either. Chris just keeps saying that he's done. My parents have tried stepping in as mediators, trying to get him to at least talk to me, but still, nothing. It feels like I've hit a brick wall, and I don't know what else to do. I'm at a complete loss. I know I hurt Chris deeply, and I know I deserve a lot of the blame here, but at the same time, I never thought it would come to this. I thought we'd be able to work through it like we've done with other issues in the past, but I guess this time I pushed too far, and now, I don't know how to fix it. I just want him to give me a chance to make things right, but I'm starting to realize that might never happen. I'm tired. I'm hurt. I'm scared that I've lost him for good, and I don't know how to move forward from here. If anyone has any advice, I'd really appreciate it, because right now I'm completely lost. Update. Hey Reddit, it's been a while, and I didn't update sooner because honestly I needed a break. The first time I posted, the backlash was intense. Everyone was blaming me, saying I deserved everything that was happening, and it got overwhelming. I ended up logging off Reddit for a while just to clear my head. But since so many people have been tagging me, asking for an update, I figured I might as well give one. So first things first, I got served. Chris is serious about the divorce, and even though it's been almost a month, he hasn't budged. I've tried everything, but he's completely done with me. And you know what? I've kind of resigned myself to fate at this point. I did this to myself, and I deserve the consequences. There's no running away from it anymore. I'm still living at my parents' house, and well, it hasn't been easy. They're making me pay rent, which I haven't started yet because I don't have the money, but they've made it clear that if I want to keep living here, I'll need to get a job and start contributing. They're really disappointed in me. They don't blame Chris for kicking me out. They think I brought it all on myself, and they've been pretty vocal about that. It stings, but I can't even argue with them because they're right. I had this coming, so I've had to get serious. I pulled out my degree, dusted it off, and started job hunting. It's been years since I last worked, and it's like I've been hit with a reality check. I never realized just how hard the job market is right now. I guess Chris protected me from all of this when we were together. He always took care of things, made sure I was comfortable, and now that I'm on my own, I'm seeing how difficult it is out there. I've applied for a bunch of jobs, but it's been rough. No interviews yet, but I'm still searching, so fingers crossed something will come through soon. It's been really tough trying to adjust to this new reality. I went from having everything, Chris's support, a home, stability, to suddenly being on my own, having to find a job, and facing disappointment from my own family. It's been a lot to handle, and there are days where I just feel like I'm drowning in my own misery. I try to stay hopeful, but it's hard when it feels like everything's crumbling around me. I know I brought this on myself, and I'm trying to live with that. I know I hurt Chris deeply, and there's no going back now. I just wish I had seen things clearer before it all fell apart. I'm trying to move forward, but it feels like I'm stuck in this limbo where everything I once had is gone, and I don't know how to rebuild from here. Anyway, that's the update. I'm still alive, still searching for a job, and still dealing with the consequences of my actions. Update. Hello, Reddit. So it's been a while. Actually, it's really been a while. I kind of forgot to update because, to be honest, nobody was really on my side anyway, so I didn't see the point. But then I saw my post on a TikTok video, and that was what finally pushed me to update. So here we are. First off, the divorce is finalized. It was pretty quick since Chris and I hadn't been married for very long. No kids, no child support or custody issues, no shared debts, and our finances were separate. I was a stay-at-home wife, but only for 2 months, so I didn't even qualify for spousal support. Chris got to keep his house, and that was that. Everything was over so fast, and now I'm just living, I guess. Living with my misery. I have a job now. It's not much. I'm not going to lie to you all. It's not some amazing job, but it pays the bills, so I guess that's something. I'm still living with my parents, which is kind of a mixed bag. On the one hand, it allows me to save more than I would have if I were living on my own. But on the other hand, I feel like I'm stuck. Like I'm not moving forward in life at all. My parents are supportive, but it's hard not to feel like I'm back where I started with nothing to show for it. It's been almost a year since everything fell apart, and I still can't shake the regret. I think about it every single day, and I don't think I'll ever forgive myself for what I did. The worst part is that I can see how much happier Chris is without me. I know it's not healthy, but I stalk him on social media, and it's like a knife to the heart every time. He's thriving, he's happy, he's living his best life while I'm stuck here, drowning in my own misery. He even got a promotion at work. Meanwhile, I'm out here, lonely, sad, and bitter, watching from the sidelines while everyone else has moved on. All of our friends, well, most of them, if not all of them, sided with Chris. I get it, I really do. I was the one who messed up. I disrespected him, I mocked him, and I took him for granted. And now I'm paying the price for that. But it's hard, you know? It's hard to see him surrounded by people doing well. And here I am, all alone just trying to survive. I keep thinking back to how things could have been different if I had just realized sooner what I was doing. If I had just treated him with the respect he deserved, maybe things wouldn't have turned out like this. But it's too late now. I can't change the past, and I have to live with that. I don't know if I'll ever truly get over this. Some days I feel like I'm drowning, and other days I just feel numb. But I guess that's life now, just surviving, one day at a time. I know I have to move on at some point, but right now it feels impossible. He's happy without me, and that's what kills me the most. Sometimes it feels like I never truly got the chance to react to everything that happened. It all spiraled so quickly, and I was left standing on the sidelines while life just kept moving forward, faster than I could process. One moment, Chris was utterly devoted to me, worshiping me even. He was always there, always supportive, and I just took it all for granted. Then, almost overnight, it felt like everything shifted. One moment we were happy, and the next, he became distant, cold, like he'd shut off a part of himself I'd never seen before. Before I even had a chance to understand what was happening, I was kicked out of our home. I found myself back at my parents' place, scrambling to find a job, struggling with the reality of working a 9-to-5 again. And God, how I hate it. It all happened so fast. I never really got the chance to sit down and process it. Everything moved like clockwork, but I was stuck on the outside, watching everyone else keep going while I stayed in limbo. It's like I was a bystander in my own life, watching these huge changes unfold, but never really reacting. I didn't get the time to feel it, you know? I was just surviving, getting through the motions of finding a job, paying rent to my parents, existing day by day. I feel like I'm only now starting to catch up with everything that's happened, and I don't know how to deal with it all. I miss him so much, more than I thought I ever could. And with that missing comes the regret, the kind that sinks so deep it feels like I'll never claw my way out of it. I replay everything in my head over and over again, wondering what would have happened if I had just acted differently, if I hadn't pushed him away, if I had shown him the respect and love he deserved. And then there's this anger that I can't quite shake either. I hate him for not even considering therapy or counseling. I hate that he just headed straight for divorce without a second thought. It feels like he didn't even try. Like he didn't even want to give us a chance to fix what we had. He was so quick to write me off, and I hate that. But even in that anger, there's a part of me, a small, quiet part, that knows he did what he had to do. Deep down, I know that I had it coming. As much as I want to blame him for not fighting for us, I know that the real blame lies with me. I disrespected him, and I took him for granted. He tried to be everything for me, and I treated him like he was nothing. That's on me. No amount of therapy or counseling could have erased the way I made him feel. So now I'm stuck in this weird in-between, missing him desperately, regretting everything I've done, hating him for leaving so abruptly, but knowing deep down that I'm the one to blame. It's a mess, and I don't know how to untangle it. Some days I wonder if I'll ever be able to. Other days I wonder if I even deserve to. I wish I had more to say, some kind of resolution, but right now I'm just trying to figure out how to live with everything that's happened. How to live with myself. So yeah, that's the update. I'm still here, still trying to pick up the pieces, still dealing with the consequences of my actions. Thanks for reading, I guess.